Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel and happy March! I feel like I say this every single year, but 2023 is absolutely flying and it's already time for my March update for my 2023 palette panning projects. If you're new to my channel, I am working on 2 year-long eyeshadow palette panning projects this year. I have a usage goal focused pan that palette and a usage goal focused no palette left behind. All of that gets really jumbled in my brain and it's hard to say sometimes. So in these update videos, I just kind of go through my usage each month and show you all of the eyeshadow that I've been using. So if that sounds good, just keep on watching. Okay, I have my spreadsheet handy with my stats. So if you see me looking down, I'm just looking at my laptop here. These types of videos where you're keeping track of your usage and sharing your stats and all of that, honestly, it is probably for someone who has their life a little bit more together than I do. I am not organized to keep up with this very well, so I just kind of frantically was looking back at my Sharpie marks in my palette and updating my spreadsheet for you. But I think I've got everything updated now so that I can share with you all of the palettes that I used in my No Palette Left Behind and all of the shades that I used in February in my Pan That palette. So my Pan That palette is the Morphe and Jaclyn Hill Volume 1 palette. I will go ahead and show you what this palette was looking like last update. And here is what this palette is looking like now. So again, making some kind of slow and steady progress in this palette. No pans as of yet, but we do have some dips going and I tried my best to use as many shades in the palette as I could. Last update, I set a goal to try to use every shade in the palette at least once and I didn't quite get there this time. There are a couple shades that I still need to use, but February, to be fair, is a shorter month than all the other ones. So I'm trying not to beat myself up about that one, but I will go ahead and share with you all of the shades that I did use in February, as well as my total usages of those shades in 2023 so far. So the shade in Light I used 3 times in February for a total of 8 uses to date. The shade Beam I used 1 time in February for a total of 7 uses. The shade Silk Cream I used 2 times in February for a total of 5 uses. The shade MFEO I used once in February for a total of 4 uses. I finally dipped into the shade Faint this month and I used it 3 times for a total of 3 uses so far. I also used the shade Sissy for the first time this month, so a total of 1 uses so far on that. The shade Butter I used once in February for a total of 3 uses. The shade Pooter, which someone explained to me in the comments that they think is a pet name, I used once in February for a total of 4 uses. I used the shade Pukey twice for a total of 4 uses. The shades Hunts, Firework, and Queen, I used all of those for the first time this month, so 1 use on each of those to date. I used the shade Obsessed twice in February for a total of 5 uses. Hillster and Roxanne are 2 more shades that I used for the first time in February, so 1 use on each of those. I used the shade Buns twice in February for a total of 4 uses. The shade Hustle I used 1 time, and that's the first time I've used that so far this year. The shade 24/7 I used once in February for a total of 2 uses. Same for the shade Chip. I used it once in February for a total of 2 uses. And the shade Mocha I used once in February for a total of 3 uses so far. And finally, I used the shade Central Park once in February for a total of 2 uses. And I used the shade Abyss once in February for a total of 3 uses so far in 2023. So feeling pretty good about my progress so far. As I mentioned, there are still a few shades that I haven't hit yet. I still have yet to use Creamsicle, which is this really yellowy light orange shade. And then these shades in this corner over here, as I predicted, I haven't really found a chance or a reason to use yet. So that's Royalty, Twerk, Pool Party, and Jada. And every other shade I've used. So I'm feeling like in March I will definitely hit my goal of using every shade at least once. And there are a couple of shades that I think I will hit my yearly goal of 10 uses on. Mainly the kind of inner corner shades that I've been getting a lot of use out of. So in Light and Beam, both have pretty good dips on them. And it is really, really easy for me to use these. I just pop them in the inner corner. As I said, in Light already has 8 uses on it and Beam already has 7 uses on it. So I anticipate definitely hitting the 10 use mark on those in March, which is not to say that I won't be using them again. I'm definitely going to keep using them as I continue using the palette throughout the year. But I will at least have hit my 10 use goal on 2 of the shades in this palette and continue to make progress throughout the palette as a whole. So I dipped into my Pan That palette 30 times in February in comparison to 45 times in January. So I feel like that's pretty good with February being a slightly shorter month. And with all of the other palettes that I've been working on this month, you may have seen I did a lot of palette focused content in February. So I've got 75 total uses on the palette to date. Feel like March I will kind of get back on track with using it as much as I did in January and hopefully get some really good usage on the rest of the shades, especially the ones that haven't been used at all or have only been used once or twice. By the way, as always, I will have the intro videos for both of these projects linked in the description below. And I also have a panning playlist where you can find all of the panning projects that I'm working on in 2023. So if you're feeling behind or you just kind of want to binge watch some panning content, that will be there for you. But now I'm going to move into my No Palette Left Behind project, which is the project where I set a goal of using all of my eyeshadow palettes 3 times over the course of the year at least. I have brought in quite a few new palettes into my collection over the past couple of months, which is humbling me quite a bit and also making me think that I definitely need to slow down on bringing palettes into my collection if I'm going to achieve my goals with this project, because the more palettes I bring in, the less uses I'm getting on the palettes that I already have, and it's going to become more and more difficult to hit that 3-use goal. But I am proud to say that I was able to use 14 palettes in February. And in the month of February, I was able to hit my 3-use goal on 3 of those palettes. I've hit my 3-use goal on 4 of the palettes in my collection so far, which doesn't sound like a lot. There's still a lot to be done, but I'm happy with that progress, and I figured I would share with you each of the palettes that I used, insert any photos that I have if I took any. I feel like I had a harder time taking photos of my looks this month. For some reason, I just felt like I was always rushed when doing my makeup. So if I have any photos, I will definitely insert them as I'm talking about the palettes. And I also made quite a bit of content around my eyeshadow palettes this month. So if I made a video using one of the palettes that I'm talking about, I'll have that linked in the description box below as well. One of those palettes is my Pat McGrath Mothership 10 Moonlit Seduction palette. You may have seen I recently posted a 3 looks, 1 palette video using this, so that definitely got me to my 3-use goal. I've actually used this palette 4 times total in 2023 because I had made a previous YouTube video where I also was using this palette. It was a trying new makeup video, and if I remember, I will link that one in the description as well. I had a lot of fun filming the 3 looks for that video, and I also have lots more looks that I would like to do with this palette, so just because I've hit the 3 uses on it doesn't mean I'm putting the palette away for the rest of the year. But definitely feel happy to have achieved my 3-use goal with this palette because it is probably the most expensive palette in my collection and one that I definitely want to get the use out of. Then I will go ahead and talk about both of these together because I used them in a recent video as well. I purchased 2 of the collab palettes from the Oden's Eye Perfect World collection, the Sea Talk palette in collaboration with Lauren May Beauty, and the Flora Story palette in collaboration with Makeup Just for Fun. I used both of these palettes once this month for that video, which was a first impressions and swatching video. Again, Link will be in the description. Definitely looking forward to getting some more use out of these. They are beautiful color stories and I had a lot of fun playing with them. I felt super inspired by these palettes. So they are 2 more palettes that I've now added to my collection, which means more eyeshadow to be used to reach my goals, but I'm very happy to have them as additions to my collection. They're both very unique and both creators that I watch and enjoy and wanted to support. We may as well get all of my Glamlite palettes out of the way as well, because I think I've made a video on all of these too in the month of February. So I used my Icy Cherry palette one time in February in a Valentine's Day Get Ready With Me video. I have a picture from that look that I can insert, but it was just a super bright, hot pink kind of halo smoky eye, which was really fun to create. It definitely fit the mood for Valentine's Day, so that one was really fun. I also used my Glamlite Frosted Flakes palette once in the month of February, and I used this in a trying new makeup video that I can link for you. I did a blue look in that video, and I haven't even touched the top row of this palette yet, which is all kind of oranges and golds. So lots to play with in this one too. Looking forward to getting some more uses out of it. And then I also did a video trying Glamlite for the first time with my Barbie Dream Summer palette, and I've used this one actually twice in the month of February. The eye look that I was wearing in my last palette panning update video was from this palette, and it was completely opposite to the one that I did in the first video. In that look, I used more of the mustards and the burgundy shade, and it was just a completely different vibe from the pastels that I had used in the previous video. So I'm loving the versatility of this palette. And I think those are all of the palettes that I used this month that had dedicated videos on them. So now moving to some of the other palettes that I used and didn't necessarily film or even take photos for some of them, but if I have photos, I'll make sure I insert them. I used my Tarte Sunrise Amazonian Clay eyeshadow palette 5 times in the month of February. So this is one of the ones that I have completed my usage goal on. This palette I got in a BoxyCharm, and I don't know if you can purchase it outside of that. If anyone knows, let me know in a comment, but it's just a very standard kind of neutral, easy to use everyday eyeshadow palette. I have been pulling this one out to use the shade Adore as my setting shade, and I've already got a pretty significant dip in that one. So if you haven't noticed, I said this in my February Empties, Declutters, and Pans video, but that's kind of one of the things that I do is I will just rotate through all of my palettes that have setting shades that are close to my skin tone and try to hit pan on them. And that way I'm hitting pan on eyeshadows, but they're pretty easy pans to get. So this is the one that I've been working on most recently. So even though I've hit my goal on it, it's tempting to keep using it because I'm really motivated to hit pan in that lightest matte shade. So we'll see if I'm able to do that anytime soon. And then on that same note, you will also know this if you saw my Empties, Declutters, and Pans video, but I used the Vive Modern Essentials palette 5 times in February for a total of 7 uses this year, mainly because I wanted to hit pan on my lid setting shade in this palette, So Shy. And I was able to hit pan, which is very exciting, and I definitely have hit my 3 usage goal on this one, having used it 7 times already. So I think this is what I'm gonna kind of set back in my drawer and return to at a later point in the year after I've made some progress on some other palettes. I've been doing a fun kind of like pick my palette series over on my Instagram. I'll have my Instagram linked down below if you aren't following me on there yet, but it's been really fun to just post a few palettes and then have you all vote in my stories of which one I should use. And I did a post with all of my Natasha Denona mini eyeshadow palettes, and the one that won was the mini Star palette. So I used this one twice in the month of February, and I tried to make a reel of it, but it didn't work out, so I think I ended up just posting that look to my stories. But I really love this palette. I want to love this palette, but this stupid blue shade, which is like the coolest shade in the palette, it's like the duochrome blue to brown, it just doesn't adhere or apply to my eye. Like I can swatch it on my finger fine. Here, I'll show you. So I even just showed you, I can swatch it on my finger absolutely fine. but when it goes to putting it on my eye, I don't know if you can see from the swatch here, but the blue is just really unevenly dispersed through the shade, and it just applies really unevenly, and it doesn't look very good on my eyes, which is such a shame because I love the idea of the shade. I love the way it looks when I swatch it just on my finger, but as soon as you try to smooth it across, it kind of doesn't work so well, and I just have a lot of trouble working with the shade, to the point that I even considered just decluttering this palette. But there's still 4 other really nice neutral shades in here, so I'm not going to declutter it just yet. But if anybody has any tips for how to get this blue shade to perform a little bit better and just work a little bit more smoothly, please let me know. I don't know if maybe it's hard pan. Maybe I can try the tape trick that some of you all were telling me about in the comments of a previous video. Maybe I'll give that a try. I even considered like repressing it to see if that might help things out. You all always have the best tips and advice, so let me know what you would do if you were me. But at least I've already gotten 2 uses on this. If I still can't figure out how to make it work for me in a few months' time, I might declutter it, but I'm just gonna hold off and see. I also used my Natasha Denona Mini Nude once this month, for a total of once so far this year. And this one I have a lot easier of a time with the exception again of one shade. So this shade here, I guess it's called Coin? No, the other one, Sienna. This one here, which is again like a really pretty bronzy shade with flecks of blue and green in it, it creases on my eye so badly, like so badly. And this one I really did consider repressing again to see if I could like soak up some of the oil out of it. Again, I will listen to your tips and advice in the comments below. But other than that, I really, really love this palette. It's obviously super easy to use. I like taking it with me when I travel. And it's just a really easy everyday one. So I don't think I'll have any trouble getting 2 more uses on this year. And then finally, for my Natasha Denona palettes I used in February, I used the Sunrise palette once this month. I don't think I have any pictures of it because it was just a really easy everyday look. I just used 2 of the shimmers, Laurel and Agate, which are in the top right hand corner, all over the lid with a matte brown in the crease and some mascara, kind of like what I'm wearing today. And it just made for a really easy, simple, pretty everyday eye look. This palette isn't like my absolute favorite. Like if you're gonna buy a Natasha Denona palette, this would probably not be my top recommendation, but every once in a while I do feel like dipping in here and using the shimmers. They're a nice shimmer formula. They don't blow me away, but I did like the look that I got out of it for a really easy throw on everyday look for work or school. I'm hoping maybe I'll feel more inspired to pull this back out for spring and summer and dip into the oranges and the reds and really play up the gold vibe because I do really like that look, but I like it a lot better when I'm tan. So maybe once the self tanner comes out, I will pull this palette back out to get my next 2 uses. I used my NARS Climax palette once in the month of February, and again, I don't have a picture of it because it was just a really simple everyday eye look. It's actually the eye look that I'm wearing right now. I've just been loving a nice wash of like a champagne-y shimmer with a brown in the crease with some mascara for every day, and this top row of this palette is perfect for that. Obviously love the greens in this palette as well. Honestly, this palette is just so beautiful, and I got it at a discount when it was discontinued from NARS. I guess it was like last summer, but I really wish they hadn't discontinued this because it's honestly just a dream palette. I love it so much. So looking forward to dipping back into this one, playing with some of the other shades, as well as my kind of everyday go-to shades, because those greens, the blue in here, the taupe in here, the burgundy matte in here, they're all just so nice. Okay, nearing the end. We only have 2 left. Are you still with me? Are you still there? Leave me a comment of your favorite emoji down below if you've made it this far into the video. But I've got 2 palettes left to share with you. The first being the Beauty Bay Wilderness palette. So this was another winner of my Instagram Help Me Pick My Palette challenge. And I paired this one up against the Beauty Bay Love Notes palette, which is a very purpley pink palette. You might have seen that one in my swatching pink eyeshadows video. And this one won by a slight margin, but I was secretly super happy because I haven't dipped into this palette in so long, and it is so beautiful. Like, I can't even describe to you the love I have in my heart for the Beauty Bay shimmers. Some of the best on the market and so affordable. If you haven't tried Beauty Bay yet, they really do make some high quality eyeshadow for really affordable prices. Better than ColourPop in my opinion in terms of like the impact and all of that. And they're just soft and they blend and they're just stunning. So I made a reel with this palette and I basically had no plan for what look I was gonna do. And my eye just went right to the greens in this palette because I love green eyeshadow and this palette has some really good ones. And the look that I created ended up being like a perfect St. Patrick's Day look. So if you're looking for some St. Patty's Day inspiration now that it's March, I will insert a photo of that and you can also check out the reel on my Instagram, but definitely a stunner of a palette. I've used this once in February, but I can't wait to dip back into it again. And finally, the last palette that I used in February is my Anastasia Beverly Hills Soft Glam palette. Mine is looking a little bit beat up and it's seen better days, but I really do love this palette. It will always have a special place in my heart. I just love ABH mattes. There's something about them that just are so easy. So I have to be honest with you, I don't even think I used a shimmer when I used this month. I think I just did an all matte look, a quick one for every day. No pictures, no evidence, but I know that I used it. So that's one use down on this palette. A super easy palette to dip into for the neutral shades, and one that I don't think I'll have any issues dipping back into 2 more times. Whew, these videos are like a marathon. So those are all of the palettes that I used in February. My goal for February for the No Palette Left Behind challenge was to use a completely new set of palettes from the palettes that I used in January, and I think I did that. I actually don't think there were any repeats from January to February. I don't know if I can make that same promise for March because I'm definitely going to be dipping back into the Wilderness palette for St. Patrick's Day. So I don't really know what goal to set. Let me think. So my goal for March, I'm going to set it as using more of my quads because I didn't use any quads this month. And I have some Tom Ford quads, I have some ColourPop quads, and I think it would be good to get some uses on those. So I will set that as my goal for March, and I also just want to be very mindful of how many palettes I'm bringing in during March. I already know I have one coming that I'm going to be doing a video around, but other than that, I'm going to try to cool it a little bit with bringing more palettes in because I'm never going to get to my 3-use goal on all of these if I keep bringing palettes in at the rate that I have been. I would love to hear from you what palettes you enjoyed using out of your collection this past month and any palettes that you are looking forward to using in the month ahead. If you made it this far in the video, please give it a like. You made it this far, you might as well like it. Might even subscribe. I don't know, if you're into eyeshadow, if you're into panning and makeup and beauty and all of that stuff, feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see my upcoming videos. I am traveling a little bit this first week of March, so I'm doing a little bit of pre-filming, but I hope to have my next video up in the next couple of days. So until then, I will see you in my next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!